The video opens with Harvey Levin introducing himself as the narrator of pop culture history. He frames Kanye West as the most talked-about figure on TMZ in 2018, emphasizing that his presence on the site wasn't just another celebrity headline, it was constant, dominating the entertainment cycle. The narrator explains that Kanye was involved in music, family drama with Kim Kardashian, and cultural conversations. But then everything shifted when he started publicly wearing the MAGA hat. Harvey describes this moment as a shockwave through black culture and the wider fan base, making it clear that this wasn't a small fashion statement, it was a symbolic rupture that shook millions. The narrator points out that the reaction wasn't only about Kanye supporting Trump, but also about how unexpected it felt coming from an artist who had long been a voice inside black music and hip-hop culture. Harvey reminds viewers that he personally covered Kanye's breakdown before, setting the stage for the audience to understand that this moment felt like a collision between politics, culture, fame, and instability. The narrator establishes the stakes immediately. Kanye didn't just walk into a newsroom, he walked into a cultural battlefield. The tone is dramatic, but rooted in storytelling, as Harvey builds curiosity about what would happen when Kanye took the stage at TMZ Live. The narrator explains that before Kanye came into the newsroom, Harvey wanted to meet him privately, so Kanye invited him for breakfast at his home on a Sunday. Harvey describes Kanye as lucid, charming, funny, and mentally present during the meal. The narrator highlights that this was an important detail because Harvey was assessing whether Kanye was stable enough to go live on camera. The breakfast lasted hours, and Harvey admits he wasn't sure what to expect, but Kanye surprised him by being grounded, relaxed, and coherent. Harvey also mentions that Kim wasn't there, but the kids were, subtly hinting at the complexity of Kanye's mental state inside family life. After breakfast, Kanye enthusiastically agreed to come to TMZ's office to talk. The narrator explains that when Kanye arrived, he appeared the same as he had during breakfast, at first. Harvey emphasizes that celebrities had come into the newsroom before, and nobody reacted like fans would imagine, until Kanye started talking. The narrator explains that Harvey believed Kanye's visit would lead to a meaningful conversation, but even he couldn't predict what was coming. The build-up creates tension without filler, making the audience lean in because the narrator is signaling that Kanye was stable in private but unpredictable in public, which made the next events even more compelling.
The narrator reaches the turning point. Kanye begins rambling during the TMZ Live segment, then casually drops the slavery comment. Harvey repeats Kanye's exact phrasing, 400 years sounded like a choice, and the narrator explains that the room collectively froze. Harvey admits he didn't interrupt Kanye because he didn't know where the thought was going, but it quickly became clear that Kanye was drifting into something chaotic. The narrator explains that Kanye tried to justify the remark philosophically, reframing slavery as a mental prison, not literal history, rejecting labels like slavery equals black people or Holocaust equals Jewish people, claiming that prison unites us as one human race. Harvey expressed disbelief, describing the staff's reaction as being on pins and needles, realizing they were witnessing a real-time meltdown, not a scripted debate. The narrator explains that Kanye wasn't speaking like a man making a structured argument. He was speaking like someone trying to sculpt reality as he talked. Harvey stresses that Kanye had just gotten off opioids days before, which made the moment feel even more volatile. The narrator makes it clear that this wasn't a historical critique. It was a public, unfiltered mind trying to remix trauma into philosophy, and the world wasn't ready for it. The narrator emphasizes that this moment alone made the clip explode across media because it felt raw, uncontrolled, and culturally radioactive.
The narrator explains that once Kanye says slavery was a choice, Van Lathan stands up and confronts him.
Harvey describes Van's reaction as emotional but grounded in reality, delivering a rebuttal that reflected lived experience, not abstract philosophy. Van tells Kanye that while he makes music and lives as a genius, everyday people have to deal with threats, marginalization, and real consequences. The narrator explains that Van wasn't attacking Kanye's right to free thought. He was attacking the irresponsibility of using fame to detach from historical pain. Van calls Kanye's words nonsensical, expressing deep disappointment and hurt, explaining that Kanye was pretending enemies were on the same team, which felt dangerous and delusional. The narrator explains that the staff, who had initially ignored Kanye, now became fully locked into the confrontation. The narrator makes it clear that this was no longer celebrity gossip. It was a collision between Kanye's worldview and reality itself. Harvey admits that he was furious and didn't know if he reacted properly because Kanye wasn't in a mental place to absorb logic. The narrator explains that this made the moment impossible to manage, unpredictable, and viral-worthy, because it felt like watching a mind split between apology and provocation, pain and ego, brilliance and breakdown.
The narrator explains that after the confrontation, Kanye apologizes emotionally to Van, saying he didn't mean to express things in a way that caused pain, acknowledging the shock caused by both the hat and his remarks. The narrator explains that Kanye tries to flip the metaphor again, saying TMZ is now the hospital to fix the world, and claiming Obama was our opioids, implying that society was medicated into comfort, ignoring real problems. The narrator explains that Kanye then shifts into commentary about black-on-black crime, claiming that violence in Chicago gets ignored unless the perpetrator is white, which sparks another heated debate. Harvey describes this as doubling and tripling down, showing Kanye wasn't really retreating, he was shape-shifting. The narrator explains that this emotional zigzag made Kanye feel both self-aware and detached from consequences. He tells Charles not to interrupt him because it would confuse his stream of thought, which Harvey describes as appalling and dismissive. The narrator explains that Kanye wanders around the office instead of fighting, trying to hug, confusing confrontation with affection, making the staff unsure how to manage him. The narrator emphasizes that the moment was less about winning a debate and more about watching a man try to rewrite reality in real time.
The narrator explains the aftermath. Harvey reflects on whether it was right to put Kanye on camera when he had stability issues, admitting that he assumed Kanye would be the same in public as he was in private. The narrator explains that Harvey still debates this decision internally. Harvey then shifts into commentary about Kim Kardashian sticking with Kanye longer than expected before divorce to make sure he was on a stable plane. The narrator explains that Harvey highlights mental illness as a wider issue affecting families and fame, stressing that even if Kanye wouldn't harm the kids, his episodes ripple into everyone around him. The narrator explains that Harvey sees the TMZ confrontation as part of Kanye's legacy, a mosaic moment that defined how the public saw him. The narrator ends by explaining that this moment wasn't a cancellation or a comeback. It was a cultural timestamp that changed the conversation around Kanye forever. The narrator emphasizes that legacy isn't only built by albums, fashion, or marriage, but also by moments where the world feels like it's watching the mask slip.
The narrator explains that Harvey closes the video by reinforcing the importance of responsibility when giving someone with stability issues a platform. He stresses that Kanye's words became a national conversation because his voice was too big to ignore, even when his logic collapsed.
The narrator explains that Harvey portrays Kanye as someone who launched debates not because he wanted conflict, but because his mind was moving faster than the moment could contain. The narrator explains that Harvey wants the audience to see this not as a political endorsement clip or a breakdown clip, but as a legacy-defining collision between free thought and cultural consequence. The narrator explains that Harvey wants the audience to walk away asking, when does genius stop being provocative and start being painful? The narrator emphasizes that the clip mattered because it wasn't scripted, polished, or controlled. It was a real-time explosion that made everyone rethink Kanye's place in culture.
The narrator explains that Harvey signs off again, repeating his role as the storyteller of pop culture history, closing the chapter by reinforcing that Kanye's TMZ live appearance was a historical pop culture fracture. The narrator explains that the video became a symbol of Kanye's unpredictable era, where one sentence could outweigh 10 albums in public memory. The narrator emphasizes that this moment became a case study in celebrity instability, media responsibility, cultural trauma, and engagement-driven virality. The narrator closes by explaining that Kanye didn't walk into TMZ to answer questions. He walked in to start arguments, spark emotions, and force conversations that would live far beyond the interview itself. Legacy isn't always built in studios. Sometimes it's built in newsrooms, in arguments, in awkward silences, and in moments the internet refuses to forget.